Hello, everybody, and welcome to today's webinar, New Era of Evangelism, a Review of 2020. I'm Larry Witzel, founder and president of SermonView Evangelism Marketing. Here at SermonView, we have a passion for ministry and we're nerds for marketing. Now, obviously, the events of 2020 have had a huge impact on Seventh-day Adventist evangelism. And in today's webinar, we're going to share some of our experiences working with churches across North America. Before we dive in, though, I just want to say thank you. Thank you for the work that you do. The ministry environment is harder today than it's been in our lifetimes. And I'm tired. I've been working harder and seeing less measurable results in the work that I do, both here at SermonView and in my local church ministry. Frankly, it's had a negative impact on my self-confidence. But here's the thing. It's not about me. It's not about my confidence. It's about God, and it's about his kingdom. And it's about reaching those whom God has called us to reach, reaching those that God has prepared. So as we put 2020 behind us, I want to lean into the future. I want to be confident that God has got this. God's got big things planned for you and for your ministry, for your church. He has big things planned for your community. So we're just excited to be part of your journey. So thank you for letting us be part of your ministry. And we're just so incredibly blessed because of you, that you're allowing us to share in your journey. So thank you. Thank you. Vince Williams is our Vice President for Marketing here at SermonView. I've asked him to share some things that we've learned over the last 9 months, and then talk about some ways that we're looking to help you as we move into 2021.
Thanks, Larry. I want to start by echoing a little what Larry said, just in the sense that there has been a huge change in the world as we know it and the landscape of evangelism. There are things that we have been doing for decades that were working enough, but I see something positive in it. And so what I want to reflect on today is what we've learned throughout 2020. There's some real positive stuff that's come out of it. But we understand that you guys are asking big questions, and hopefully we can answer some of those today. So let's dive into the information and just kind of go through this. All right, so first I want to talk about our experience at SermonView. If you are not familiar with us, we are marketing nerds. That's what we are. We do it all with a heart for ministry. That's our mission. But we love the process of marketing. Over last decade plus, we have tracked and managed over 5,000 evangelistic events. We have worked on multiple national events, including Shadow Empire, the recent Forecasting Hope. We've done the Appearing. There's plenty of others as well. And that's given us a perspective and an amount of information and data that we hope we can share and download a little with you today. And then also promoted and tracked hundreds of local church and conference-wide events during the pandemic. And that's really the focus here, because things have changed, and what's happening with the pandemic has really changed that experience for all of us. And so I want to talk about that. So let's talk about where we're getting our data. I want you guys to know this isn't just us just kind of telling you what we think or what we feel. As marketers, we're very data-driven. And so we have the advantage of seeing some things and having some perspective that we're going to share with you today that you wouldn't have. One is Interest Tracker. So we'll talk more about that later, but Interest Tracker is our tracking software. It's being used by over 750 churches across the North American division. And we have access to seeing the data at a high level, at a macro level there, so that we can really understand what's happening at the local church level. We had 200 plus events using Attendance Tracker this year for both online and in-person meetings, and that's helped us to evaluate not only how many people are engaging, but following through the registrations to attendance. And then finally, we performed about 300 online event marketing campaigns this year. So that's given us a lot of perspective. It's been a fun project to really aggregate all of this data down and be able to share some of that with you guys today. So let's talk about pre-pandemic evangelism. I think we all understand what it is, but there's some specific pieces that are changing now. And so I want to talk about what we were at before so that we know where we're headed. In pre-pandemic evangelism, we were focused almost exclusively on in-person events. There were some, churches trying to be innovative and do some online things, but I don't know that online was catching in the same way that it's been forced to now. Audience have expanded for online events in a different way. People in all different age demographics and economic socio-environments have changed their perspective on online events, and it's the world that we live in today. So before it was all predominantly in person, and it makes sense because in person is a much closer relational experience. It was dominantly using direct mail as the primary marketing tool. Direct mail was still the dominant tool. About 70% of the time, it was the heavy use. We had done substantial work with online marketing, social media marketing, but direct mail was still a great answer for those in-person events and dominantly used as the marketing premise for that. It was all very focused on opening night attendance. That was the initial thrust of the event, was how many people could you get to opening night. The success of an event was evaluated in its first place by those opening night numbers. And then more so, the metric of success for the entire event was often categorized as baptism. We were very much focused on how many people stayed through that series and made decisions to join the church. So let's talk about evangelism in 2020. It's pretty much exclusively online events at this point. And so we know that. And because of that, there are three major questions that we're going to try to answer today. Will people attend online events? That's a big question that comes up when we're talking to pastors and churches. And how do we create compelling content? So the issue is the idea of creating content that people will watch online. The market space is packed. It's a very different level of competition that you're competing with within the online environment. And then how do you promote these types of events so that they do get noticed in this very noisy online environment as well? So we're going to talk through all three of those points and hopefully sort of give you some insight that will help set the record straight and help you and your members and your board kind of make the decisions for where you're headed in 2021. First, I want to say, I'm not sure that 2021, early 2021 is going to be any different. The idea of physical events is still hit and miss at this point, depending on the parts of the country you're in and decisions that your church and your area are making. So, online events still have a lot of validity, but the bonus of what's coming out of this is I think we're starting to understand the value of these events in the long term. So I want to talk about that alone. Does online evangelism work? And when we're asked that question, I think we have to look at what that question really means. So my answer to that is yes, it does, but it needs to be measured differently. It does not work the same as physical events. And I think that's something we're going to have to accept and we're going to have to mourn a little. And it's a reality that online evangelism is very different than in-person evangelism. But again, there's some real benefits to that as well. In an online evangelistic series, relationship or connection is the new goal. And primarily this is because that was built into an in-person event to some degree. Now, for sure, people would go to in-person events and nobody would connect with them or relate with them. So they would leave and not come back. But the opportunity for relationship and connection was sort of built into the in-person structure. Now it's something we have to be moving towards. It's a goal that we have to track and measure. And it's something that we have to really be intentional about through that process. Our online evangelism needs to be shorter, both in series length and in presentation duration. So it needs to be shorter because attention spans are different in online environments than they are in person, but also presentation, the series length as well, not just the presentation duration. The series length needs to be potentially shorter as well, as some of these series that carry over an entire month can really lose steam in an online environment when you don't have that interpersonal connection. The focus moves from baptisms to interactions. What we're doing is we're really talking about moving away from the goal and the metric being baptisms to a metric of interactions, engagements. How often are we connecting with people? That's really important in an online environment because it's easy to not do that and skip that. And then this is one that I really would love to just continue to communicate to you guys today in an ongoing fashion, because it's so important. Our team here talks about it all the time. Every level of engagement requires and deserves a communication strategy. And what we mean by that is when people were coming to physical meetings, the communication strategy often focused on the people that attended. Now there's so many different places that they can come and go that you really need a communication strategy for each one. I realize it's a lot of work, but we're going to give you some tips today and hopefully help you understand better ways to do that through this process. So I want to show you guys how this all breaks down. So we're going to start with the first question. Will people attend an online event? So first of all, an online event is a different paradigm. It is a different level of the funnel. We talk about funnels here at SermonView all the time. If you watched any of our webinars, you know it's one of our favorite concepts. It's a direct translation from the marketing world, this idea of funnels. And what happens is when you had people going to an in-person event, they were already down the funnel a little ways, which is because they're walking through the doors, they've experienced the church, they've experienced some of the members, they've experienced the environment. In an online setting, that doesn't happen at all. So they're far more removed from you. This would be the same as an online store and your personal relationship to that, potentially from a store that you've walked in and customer service you've experienced. There's something experiential about those things that just drives us in a different way. So we have to realize that people are farther up the funnel in this process. In this case, we've created a basic funnel, talking about online, and we're talking about moving people to a group environment, some sort of session or classwork, Bible study, something along those lines, something meeting a felt need or a specific target for that demographic. Hopefully moving them into in-person, coming through your church doors and connecting, and then hopefully engaged and involved in your church. So if we use this as the funnel for this new paradigm, we have to realize 50% of registrants would attend an in-person event. So when we would market for an in-person event for you, now this is national averages. These are the statistics across the board. This depends on demographics. Your offer makes a huge impact on how successful that is. And you know where you're located, all of these factors play in. But on national average, 50% of those registered would attend an in-person event once they registered for the event. So here's where some of the great disappointment comes in as we went through 2020. 30% on average of online attendees show up to the event. This felt like a great disappointment for some of you, and I understand why. As a marketing person, we're sort of trained to sort of digest these very small numbers and realize the loss. But it's hard when you work in an environment like a local church and you're used to connecting with the people and building relationships. This feels like there's just so many people out there that are not engaging at a level, and it can be heart-wrenching. But the truth is, these numbers are excellent for these types of events, and really show a need within the community. And I'll show you why, and I'll show you how that all breaks down. So if we just took a look at an online versus an in-person event and how your evangelistic effort and promotion would happen, we're going to take a budget of $2,500 for both online or in-person. Same budget, either event. Now for online, that would be all pretty much online marketing. For in-person, there's going to be some direct mail and all of those factors that we talked about just a moment ago. The cost per registration, this is very, very telling. This is, again, national averages. Please understand this can change by the region, the demographics. National averages say that, and these are our national averages. This is not some other industry. This is what's happening with Adventist churches across the NAD. $38 to get someone to register for an online event versus an in-person of $83. So there's a distinct difference and a little bit of number play there with that 3883, but it's $38 online, $83 in person. Total registrants, that's 66 people for your $2,500 that are coming to your online event versus 30 people that are registering for the in-person event. So there's 66 registrants on one side, 30 registrants on the other side. These are people that have given us their genuine information, that are in your local area and are interested Nobody gives you genuine information for an offer unless they're interested. Think about the last time you saw an offer and you thought, there's no way I want that. Nothing about that resonates with me. Let me give those people my email and my phone number. It does not happen. People are giving you verifiable information is because at some level you piqued their interest or you hit a felt need that they're experiencing in that moment. Now, the percent to attend, again, 32% of online people, that's the actual number. I ran it to 30 on the last slide. 32% will attend, national averages say, versus 50% for in-person. That means that you have 21 people attending your online event for your budget versus 15 people in person. So already we're getting a substantially higher number of attendees through this online event than we were getting for in-person. Now, make no mistake, I understand, you understand that in-person is farther down the funnel. The relationship with those 15 people is closer and more in tune than it is with those 21 people. But you still have 21 people in your community that you reach with a message as opposed to 15 people for the same budget. But probably more importantly, but often forgot, is that you have 45 people that I'm calling extra leads. These are people that gave you verifiable information, that genuinely were interested in your offer or some aspect of it, but didn't necessarily follow through, right? Again, go to the commercial world and think about the times you've looked at something, but you didn't purchase it in the moment. You genuinely were interested in it. It's why commercial marketers know that they have to continue to message you and contact you about those products and services so that you'll eventually move back into a position where you're ready to make a purchase or take an action. Online marketing works very much the same for ministry, unfortunately. The facts are we have to continue communication with everyone through this process. So typically with in-person, we focused on those 15 attendees and we were not focused on those 15 people that didn't attend. Those people were for the most part maybe sent an email and then they were relegated to people that just weren't right for the harvest. And then we went back to the 15 people and focused on them. But now you have 21 people, but you also have 45 people that are in a funnel. It's just a different one. So let's take a look at that. So what you have to ask yourself is, what do we do with bleed, right? Bleed is when somebody moves from the funnel to outside the funnel. They stepped in, they registered, but they never took the next action, so they bled out. It is imperative that every church take the time to strategize the communication strategy. In this case, they require a different funnel. You have to build a funnel for the different segments that occur in an online event. Otherwise, you are wasting precious budget and connection and relationship. These are people that are reaching out in some capacity, and we are not connecting with them like we need to. It is more work. It just needs to be thought about intentionally up front and managed. You can use email, SMS, direct mail, phone, something, but you need to be reaching out with a communication strategy. And I would suggest a complex communication strategy. I know that's not an easy pill to swallow, but it means you're reaching out to them multiple times. Statistical average 5 times before you're going to get a response back. So don't be disheartened when you send them something and nobody responds. That is the statistical average on that, is 5 times of reaching out before you get a response back. But you have to create a funnel for those people. So with new evangelism requires a church to determine multiple communication paths based on the behavior of the interest. That's imperative. We are now reaching out to the community and meeting them where they're at, much like Paul in 1 Corinthians, and made myself a slave to everyone to win as many as possible. We are going to where they are, and we're not asking them to come through our church doors and meet us at our level in this environment. So let me give you a sample of some communication segments that might be relevant for your church and for your evangelistic series if you do one online or do one in early 2021. People who register but don't attend. These are people that, again, gave you real information, but they just didn't make it. I don't know why. Maybe their heart changed. Maybe life came up. Maybe a good TV show was on. Maybe their kid was sick. There are reasons, but it doesn't mean that something didn't tickle their interest at some point when they registered for this event. They went through a very legitimate registration process and were informed the entire time about what they were giving information for. There's no bait and switch, no trickery with any of our systems. People who register and attend night one only. This is a different crowd. These are people who attend night one only. They may be similar to people who registered but didn't attend. Their life may have gotten in the way after night one, but it also may not have been the right content for them. It may not have hit the right felt need for them. Maybe they wanted more depth in relationship. The real answer for people that come to evangelistic series in person, oftentimes one of the number one factors there is connection. They're lonely. They need connection and relationship and cannot find it in the world. The church is a beautiful place for people to find depth of relationship. Maybe in an online environment, they didn't find that, and you can move them to a small group environment or to some other smaller type of offer as well. People who miss nights but attend regularly, they're attending regularly, but they miss nights. Are you communicating with them? Are you inviting them to watch? Or are you telling them what happened? Hey, we invited everyone to join small groups last night. I'm sorry you missed it, but I know you might be interested. So here's a link. What are you doing to communicate with those people as well so that they feel like there is relationship? Every touch, every engagement is an opportunity to build connection and relationship in an online environment, right? It's the back and forth of communication that creates relationship in an online environment. And then, of course, people who complete the series. What are you doing for them? Did you have a follow-up strategy? What is your level of communication? Don't let them fall by the wayside. This is the same for in-person events, but it's imperative for online events that you are reaching out to them and that you're telling them what comes next and you're inviting them to something really powerful or they will disappear. And if you wait 48 hours, so statistics show communication within the 24-hour window of an ask is by far the best form of communication and has the highest conversion to a relationship or to an engagement at that point. So if you complete the series and talk to them a week later, you've missed your opportunity. If somebody missed a night and you tell them about it 3 days later, you missed an opportunity. If people registered but don't attend and you don't talk to them for another week or two, you missed an opportunity. I'm not saying you don't keep talking to them, but I'm saying you do make sure that you're getting out timely communication to them through the best possible means and methodologies. And to do that, it's hard. So technology is required to do that. Luckily, there are solutions out there. A great solution for that, I think, is Interest Tracker. That's a product and a service that we provide for you. It is free to every church within the North American division. It allows you to track those engagements and those interactions. It was specifically designed for that purpose. You can have unlimited users so that you can have different members of your church connecting with different people in this environment. We're using it right now for this communication with you guys. When you registered for the event, you went into our Interest Tracker. I sent everybody a text yesterday just to say I was excited that we would be getting together today. That was as simple as writing 2 sentences and hitting a button. So it's a powerful tool for segmenting and managing those interests for different events. And you can manage multiple events at the same time, multiple tags, multiple interactions. We have plenty of videos, training, and ways that you can learn more about Interest Tracker. If you've not used Interest Tracker, you can register for a requested demo. You are in our player, which we'll talk more about here soon. But on the right side, or if you're on mobile below you, you'll see that there's opportunities for you to respond and connect. You can ask a question right there, or you can engage about Interest Tracker. You can just say, yes, I'm interested in learning more about Interest Tracker. My church would like to sign up. I realize it's free. Tell me more. And those communications will go to our team directly. Okay, so let's move on. So the answer to whether or not people will attend an online event is yes. We've proven that over the year with multiple styles of events. However, if you've watched any of our webinars in the past, you understand that there's this idea of offer, right? What is it that we're offering? Now, when you talk about online, the offer gets even more complicated in a way. Imagine a mall with 100 million stores, and your store is trying to have compelling content, to have compelling products and services. Essentially, in this case, you need to have something that resonates with people. How do you do that in an online world? Because there's a lot of noise out there and there's a lot of distraction that people can engage with. So we've already done one particular webinar. If you're interested in this webinar, you can, again, just post a question or comment. It'll go to our team and we will get you a link to it. It's called the 7 Building Blocks of Effective Evangelism. We broke down the 7 different building blocks that you need to be thinking through to have an effective evangelistic series. This was true for in-person, but we shaped this and moved this towards online events. Now, it is a slightly older webinar, and there are some things that we've learned and evolved in our thinking over the term. We're going to talk about those today. But there's definitely some great information in there that you and your team can work through to better understand how to plan for an effective evangelism series, including content and what that looks like. But I just want to go quickly through those building blocks and then answer the question about content as well as we can. We're not content providers. That's not what we do. But we have seen your content and other content throughout the year and tracked it. And we've learned some lessons that I want to share with you. So here's the 7 building blocks as we broke them down. Content being number 1. What type of content are you generating and how's it being seen out there? Delivery, the delivery method that you're going to be delivering that content. We'll talk about that a little bit. Interactions, how are you engaging with people throughout this process and throughout the entire stream of content? Decisions, what decisions are you asking for? Are you asking for decisions that are moving people closer to baptism, or are these decisions related to participating in additional events or asking for additional information, anything permission-based? Marketing, how are you promoting the event? How are people watching it? How do they know about it? Attendance tracking, this is just following up on finding how you can know who actually watched your content and what to do. And then, of course, following up with those people. And at the end of the event, how are you creating a communication strategy that we kind of talked about already? So these are the 7 building blocks. If your team talks through all of these and has solutions for all of these, I think you're going to find that you're going to have a much more successful event going forward. This, again, even if the paradigm changes and we move back somewhat similar to where we were before, this is an effective tool and framework for your church to be communicating and starting to talk through their events. But for online events, I believe it's crucial that you utilize this technology as well. All right, effective content. So these are some things that form effective content as we've seen over the last 8 months or so during the pandemic and as we've been evaluating all of this. 1, be no longer than 60 minutes. This includes everything. So if you are doing an intro, if you're doing anything else, please keep it to that 60-minute time frame. You start to lose attention span after the 60 minutes. If it's on demand, it even needs to be shorter. So again, this is for viewership for events. This is different than when you think about YouTube and all the statistics. I want to take you guys away from thinking about Vimeo and YouTube and those types of statistics. It's a different world. That's a shopping center of video content, and how long people will give you attention before they move to the next content is very different than if you're watching a class or if you're watching a seminar or anything like that. So 60 minutes, including everything, is the preferred timeline for your content. If it's on demand, meaning it doesn't feel like a live event, it needs to be shorter because people feel like they can watch it whenever. And if it's too long, they'll choose later, which generally means never. So it's important that you keep it even tighter under those purposes. This one's really, really important. You need to assume a different audience than your worship service. So when you're developing content, please understand, when somebody comes through the doors of your church and they are participating in either your worship service or even evangelistic series in your church, they are privy to the environment. They're getting cues from the parking lot through the doors into the sanctuary. They understand things about your church by the art, by the look, by the feel, by the choice of instrumentation, by the people that are there. There's so many things that they're learning just through their senses as they come in. They're stepping into your world and you're inviting them in. You want to create an environment of invitation, but they're still coming into your world. When it's an online event, none of that is true. They don't have any of their senses going to work. They're going to learn about you in real time based on what you present in the moment. It's important that you understand that, because if you just dive in business as usual, or if you follow the paradigms that you normally have during the worship service, whether that be special music or different things that you're doing, you are really asking people to qualify all of that when really what you're doing is providing an interactive Bible study. So this is not a sermon, but it is an interactive study or a presentation, and it needs to be treated like that and focused on the target. When people are signing up or registering, they're not registering for all those ancillary things. So you just need to understand it's a different audience. Your church is going to be predominantly members with a couple other people. Here, it's going to be predominantly people that you've marketed to that know nothing about your church or any part of this. You don't even know where they're at. You can't find out really yet. So you need to kind of simplify to what they've signed up for and what they've agreed to in the process. And then create interactive elements every 10 to 15 minutes. If you're not asking people to interact, which honestly, I really haven't asked you guys to interact that much, except to say you can fill out some questions on the side, you realize it starts to become a lot of just watching, and you lose understanding of how focused people are. There's two main reasons for interactive elements. One, this will gauge active watching. So when you talk about measurables for content, again, if we look at YouTube or some of those models, if you've been researching this online or listening to different groups, they might say, oh, time watching video is really important, or those kinds of metrics. I don't agree with that. We've seen, and in fact, when we did our national event, Forecasting Hope, we had a number of people that stayed to completion of video, which you think, okay, only a number of people did that, so those must be your heavy users. Well, the reality is there was 10 minutes of essentially dead air on the back end of the video. And the fact that they never left or clicked off suggested to us that they probably weren't paying that much attention in the first place. They were doing laundry, maybe they went downstairs to feed the dog. We don't know what they did, but they weren't necessarily engaged. So by asking people to interact and interface with interactive elements, you learn a lot. If you have an active watcher, you have an effective series going on. And the way you can find that out is by asking them to engage with interactive elements, such as the elements that are on the side of the screen next to you. Also, drop-offs start to happen at about the 30-minute mark without interactions. That resembles the on-demand time. That's why on-demand is shorter a lot of times, because it's just informational. If you're not getting people to engage, they start to leave a lot quicker, unless the content is really, really compelling. And so you want to use best practices. That's a combination of compelling, creative, but also those interactive elements that just create engagement. Same structure that teachers use when they're working with their class, making sure that there's an interactive element to maintain the lesson and moving forward on that. So with online, very important to use those elements and to use that metric as to how successful your event is going. If people are engaging with the event, then it's going well. I want to talk about content distribution, because early on in the pandemic, there was a lot of conversation. I've been party to a lot of conversations at different local church levels, board meetings, ministry levels, conference levels, about two competing philosophies. And so I'd like to address this right now. You have to decide what's right for your church, but our philosophy has changed over the course of the last 8 months, and I want to share that with you. The idea is width versus depth. Width is the idea that online is an exciting place because you can get large numbers. You can have 1,000 viewers, 10,000 viewers, 1 million viewers. There's all these crazy numbers out there. Everyone wants everything to go viral. However, at a local church level, it's about connection, and connection does not occur in width. Width is about number of viewers and is measured by that idea of total viewers. You're not measuring the depth of the relationship, you're measuring the number of people that are participating or watching at that level. And so some of the different models out there for going to Facebook Live and some of the conversations I've had for why you want to be on these huge platforms or multiple platforms is all about the idea of width, getting as many viewers as possible. It is our opinion at SermonView, it's my opinion personally, that the local church has always been about depth over width, and we can become allured by the idea of those big numbers, and they make us feel good. But the truth is, what we really want is engagement. That's the job of the local church, community engagement. I don't think it matters that much at a local church level how many people are watching your broadcast in another country or in another state necessarily. It's nice to have some, I'm not suggesting it's not, but you really want those local connections and you want depth. So you have to measure that by things like interactions. Relationship is built in number of interactions, not number of viewers. And so if depth is the focus of your church when you're doing online events, I think it's important for you to change your measurables to represent that. I think it's going to help with your overall satisfaction and quality of the event and see the good work that you're doing in your community as well. So we've seen both approaches, but I've seen a much higher satisfaction level with churches that really understand the concept of depth over width in their online events. So in early 2020, we were recommending a number of things. We did a large number of webinars. We were doing webinars fairly regularly because you guys had a lot of questions and we were trying to be a support system for you. And at first we were all scrambling and we were all learning in real time. So very quickly, everyone started to think about, okay, how do we just get information out? If people are not coming into our building, how do we get information out? And that's where we started looking at those vehicles like Facebook Live, YouTube Live, and Zoom. Now, your regular worship service may use some or all of these. There's nothing wrong with these particular vehicles per se, but they aren't necessarily designed ideally for depth. They're more designed around width, potentially. Zoom being an exception with their meetings and some of their in-person environments that happen there. But this was very much our thought and our promotion early on in 2020 as the pandemic first hit and the first stay-at-home orders. Then we started having conversations with the churches, and they were saying, here's the problem. We understand all of that. We cannot produce high quality content. We don't know how to do that. It's a challenge, and I understand. It is indeed a challenge. So we started to try and build a platform using our existing technology that would work for online environments. And many of you were involved with some of these events that happened early in the pandemic as well. So in this new environment, we were able to take multiple churches, have individual registration platforms for each, much the way you registered for this webinar. And then that would drop right into Interest Tracker. Churches were starting to pick up Interest Tracker more and more because of the value that came from people registering and going right into that platform so they could communicate with them as well. Again, this is the exact platform we followed with you today. You registered, you received notifications, it went into our Interest Tracker account. We're aware of who you are in that process. And then we invented a check-in system so that everyone could check in at individual places and use centralized content so that 3 different churches could have 3 different check-in portals, but all the content would be the same. However, in the end, we were just sending people to some of that same style of online content, Zoom, Facebook Live, YouTube. The challenge with that being that people were not, again, having the level of engagements and connections that we were really hoping for. So people were being very disappointed by these events because although they would have a large number of registrations and a good level of participation, they weren't feeling connected to the people that were viewing or watching. This has been an inherent problem. Some of you are probably agreeing that this has been your experience with online evangelism. Many churches have said, if that's the world that we're going to live in, we don't know what to do. We're going to, stop for now until it gets back to a normal paradigm. I would tell you online evangelism is here to stay, and there's a method for making that work. And we've proven that, and we've seen that throughout this year as we got more advanced. What we did was we introduced a new resource this fall called the Sermon Viewer. You guys are in the Sermon Viewer right now. You're experiencing the Sermon Viewer in real time. What the Sermon Viewer allowed was for an individual to be able to watch content and interact in real time with somebody from a local church. Every local church's Interest Tracker account was connected to the unique platform. So when you checked in, you were connected to that local church. In this case, you're all connected to our Interest Tracker account. However, if we had 5 different churches promoting this event, you would be going into their individual accounts. So when a comment or a question comes in, when someone requests prayer, that goes immediately into their Interest Tracker account, and then those people are notified. So we have an entire notification system by text or email letting someone know, hey, you just received a request. We're asking you guys to use that today for comments and questions. The comments or questions that you have, if you fill out the comment or question section and send it in, we're going to receive in real time those comments or questions. We're going to be moving those back through one of our administrative team who's going to be sending those to me, and then we'll be able to answer some questions for you guys during this process. If you wanted to request prayer, you can put that in. It would come in as a prayer request, and it would give us or you permission-based marketing, the opportunity for someone to say, please contact me regarding my prayer request. You could then contact them regarding prayer. In this case, requesting a Bible study. This is somebody saying, I want to go deeper and more. You could set that up with your video. You could talk about what that means. And request a free gift, which we have on your viewer today, and we'll tell you about that shortly. So if you haven't already played around with everything and just filled a bunch of stuff out, hold tight. We'll let you know what that's about as we get a little farther into this presentation. So with the sermon viewer, though, we were able to do something unique and different. We were able to set up a new environment for evangelism online that met the needs of original evangelism's goal of connection and relationship, but doing it in an online environment. And here's what that looked like. So now you could take churches, multiple churches, again, send people to individual registration sites where they would register for an event, where they would go into Interest Tracker. So now you know who registered for the event, would then send them notifications with check-in information, which would help you know who attended. You now know who registered. That's one funnel of communication. You know who attended. That's another funnel of communication. They would then watch the same content being streamed on their viewer. But the beauty of it now was that every time they connected or responded, their response or communication would go directly back to the Interest Tracker account in that local church. So not only are you tracking their attendance, not only are you tracking their registration, you're now tracking their engagement and their interactions. You, the local church, are doing that, not some high up or some other ministry or anyone else. You have that responsibility. You have that benefit. You have that relationship right up front. And that's what a lot of people have been asking for throughout this year. And we believe it's the best method. How do we know it's the best method? Well, we used it. Hopefully, many of you that are on this call experienced it a little bit with Forecasting Hope. This is an event we did nationwide from October 9th to November 3rd. This was in conjunction with Chesapeake Conference. I want to say a huge shout out and thank you to Chesapeake Conference, and especially to David Kleindens. He was the evangelist on this. He's the evangelism director at Chesapeake Conference. And his content was incredible, and viewership stayed through the whole thing. And that's a testimony to his ability to communicate and to put together great content. The communication department at Chesapeake was involved. I'm sure a lot of other people I don't even know were involved. And I want to thank all of them for the quality of content that they were able to produce. What it allowed for is churches all across the NAD to participate in an event with quality content that they might not have been able to generate themselves. Now, if you can generate your own quality content, that's great. But if you don't have the capacity to, this was an awesome event for you to be able to engage with people in your local community while using content that was at a national level, very much like an old net series, but using it in a modern landscape. Now, I do want to say, this year has been about us scrambling and developing in real-time environments. There were a number of churches, and if you're on this call, I want you to hear my apology. When we first used the sermon viewer, only day one, we had a blackout for about 11 minutes for our East Coast feed. And that was some technology that, we had to fix. But after that, this became tested. We were in 19 nights of the event on the 5 or 6 different feeds. And all of that worked out very, very successfully. So I do want to say that we know that the technology works. It's now been tested for those of you that were a part of that. Again, I apologize for any challenges up front, but realistically, this year has pushed us all to really have to develop in real time and work as a team to develop ministry habits that will work in 2020 and beyond. And I'm so encouraged by what happened with Forecasting Hope and Prophecy of the Second Coming. So I want to share some of that data with you just to show you how powerful a tool this can truly be for communities out there. So here's some statistics that happened during Forecasting Hope. For 101 churches participated across the NAD. So we had 101 churches all using one central piece of content. That would be David's sermon series, 19 episodes, in, again, multiple time zones so that we were able to meet the time zone, the 7 o'clock time for each time zone. We had 38,000 plus views over 19 episodes. Now, when you're looking at width, when you're looking at those national broadcasts, when you're looking at those big events, this may not resonate with you at the same level. But this is a huge number when you consider that these are all people connected locally. This is not people from all around the world watching. There's no escape to other areas. This is people who've registered and attended through local church environments. All 101 churches received a total of 38,000 views over the 19 episodes. There were 7,000 unique checked in attendees. 7,000 unique people checked into this event all across the 101 churches all across their local communities and areas. This is my favorite statistic out of all of them. 10,000 interactions happened. That means that there were 10,000 interactions between somebody watching, communicating through the questions, through the prayer requests, through the Bible study, through the free offers, back to a local church, and that local church communicating back to them in an ongoing fashion. This is how you build a relationship, points of connection, equal relationship over the long term. And I just think it's amazing that we had 10,000 different interactions happen throughout the span of those 19 episodes. And also, the average cost to a church was very low. We were able to aggregate that across all the churches. So at an average cost of $2,500 for evangelism, we were able to accomplish all that. Churches participating averaged $2,500, and yet had experience with these views, with these guests, with these interactions, and through all of the technology as well. So it was an incredibly successful event. We were very happy to be a part of it. We're very happy to partner with Chesapeake and with David on that event as well. And it really did sort of test out the waters. That's a lot of data for us to acquire. I spent a lot of time over the last couple of weeks just looking through that data. A lot of people responded back to a survey we did, so we got data from the local church, but we were able to actually pull data directly from the interest tracker accounts, from attendance tracker, from the interactions. These are all very legitimized numbers through that system, and we were able to watch how that process worked and really understand how effective this event was and share that with you. So the last question we said we were going to address directly was, how do you promote a successful event? We talked about content, we've talked about whether people will attend, but how do you let people know about it? The world has changed. The idea of calling up and just saying, hey, I'd like to buy X number of mailers just doesn't work anymore. Online promotion is new for a lot of churches, and trying to figure out how to do online promotion is its own thing. Let me be really candid if I can. Online promotion and landing pages and everything, which we're going to talk about in a second, it is very easy to do, but very hard to do well. And so there's a lot of disappointment that's been out there amongst churches who have attempted to do some of this themselves. And it's because the barrier to entry is very low. The barrier to being able to print something at a low cost or to design a full page flyer is fairly high. And you guys were partnering with organizations like us and Seminars Unlimited and maybe others to do that. But it got very easy to say, I can run a Facebook ad. They make it really easy. They do. What they don't make easy is being successful at it. And there's a lot of things to understand in that process. So the first thing is, if you are going to be doing your own promotion or you're going to be working with a company to help promote one of your events, the first thing you should know is the 70-30 principle. The 70-30 principle dictates that 70% of your marketing budget should match the delivery method of the event. So when you're doing an in-person event, 70% of your budget can easily be spent on physical things like direct mail, can be spent on banners and invitations and posters and physical implementations. That is a successful model for marketing. You can back that up and support that with 30% through online. If you want to do radio or TV or other options, you can do that. Now, there's always exceptions. If you have a cousin that works at a TV station and you can get free ads, please do that. There's always reasons to break these types of rules, but as a general roadmap, the 70-30 rule applies, which means for online events, 70% of your budget needs to go to online advertising. This may seem high, but the reality is this has bore itself out time and time again. Again, we've done hundreds and hundreds of events. We've done promotion for all of them, and we know what's working successfully in communities across America, and that formula has held true so many times. Now, I want to talk about probably the most important thing when it comes to advertising. So as far as how you run ads and design ads and what you get for your ads, I don't want to talk about that so much today. It's a complicated subject, and I'm happy to have that conversation with people. But I do want to talk about landing pages. Ever since we've moved to online environments and over the last year, there's been, this, all of a sudden we've started to understand the tool that is the web. And so people are looking to use the web effectively now as a way to communicate and to engage with their communities. And one piece of that, probably the most important piece in a lot of ways, are landing pages. How do you build a complex page that is also simple in nature, that causes people to want to sign up and register for an event. This is an entire industry. This is an entire science out there. It requires a lot of knowledge to do this effectively. So we've heard a lot of disappointment stories from pastors that have just built a page and put a form on it and then said nobody's registering or they're not actually engaging, they're not doing anything. Yeah, that's true. It's a very complex thing. So it's not something we can so much teach, but there are some pieces that I can share with you to help you through that process if you're engaging with it yourself or you're hiring somebody to do that. So healthy sites convert new interest at a rate of about 2.5 to 4%. That's going to be industry standard for these types of things. That's not just a general rule. That's a good rule of thumb for ministry events as well. However, you need to understand those are what we call cold interest. So this is not your members signing up or things like that. This is advertisements to the general public converting at those rates. It's very easy to get your friends and family to go to a website and fill out a form. It's very easy to get your own church members to fill out a form, although I've heard that's not easy either. I shouldn't say that. But it's easier than getting someone who's never met you or heard of you to give you verifiable information. And so that 2.5 to 4% is the industry standard and something you should be shooting for in your conversion metrics. Untested sites can literally have zero conversion. And we've done that. We test, and we'll talk about that. But you can start something and you can have an idea and it just doesn't do anything. And that's why you need to have best practices in place to build a strong landing page. And that first one, as I just said, is test, test, test. The only way to do this is to do substantial testing. I would suggest that a local church does not try to take this on because you just don't have the kind of numbers required to hit the testing metrics that you need. You need to be testing for bounce rate, time on page, conversion. It requires hundreds of thousands of views and on pages versus thousands, which is very hard for a local church to hit without a budget that typically exceeds their own budget. So what happens is you just end up wasting a bunch of dollars because people just hit a brick wall when they hit your landing page and it's not effectively doing what it needs to do to convert people. If you are going to be doing something yourselves, please use some of there's Unbounce, there's companies out there. Generally some have free, some don't, but at least they have some best practices and some things in place. I would say if you do not have a website that is tuned for evangelism today, you definitely don't want to step into landing pages at this point. We are all starting to understand the importance of the online environment and that our websites, our landing pages, our social media, everything is a tool for evangelism just as much as it's a tool for communication with our members and with our own groups. Relevant copywriting is super important, so you have to make sure that you're on topic and that it goes to the brand that you're building. So if it's a particular event with a particular voice, you need to maintain that. Relevant copywriting is not necessarily going to make a landing page, but it will break one if you do not pick the right things to say and make an audacious offer that is provocative and invites people to watching your online content. You have to build trust with your new audience. They don't know who you are. They don't know anything about you. They don't know anything about your church. You have to build trust and trust really towards that environment. That's a challenging thing when most people haven't heard of an individual church or an individual pastor. And it's something that everyone has to struggle with. So, we offer a lot of services in bio writing and other things we do to try and help build that trust and incorporate that into our landing pages. Mobile first, this is really important. If the landing page is not mobile first, it's probably not going to be effective. 55 to 65% of the registrations that come to our relevantseminars.org pages are coming from mobile. And so this is your audience. This is the people that you want to be registering for your events, the people that are responding to the ads for these types of evangelistic series, and they're still using this dominantly on mobile. So the term mobile friendly has expired. That just meant it didn't break. It wasn't the worst. It needs to be mobile first. If it is not seen predominantly as a mobile application and looks good on a browser mobile, then you're probably missing the mark and losing conversion in that process. And again, because I can't stress it enough, more testing after you do all those things. Testing, testing, testing is the key to success. We do offer a service for that, whether you're doing an event through us or not. We do offer a service called relevantseminars.org. It does build landing pages. The advantages that it has are these. First of all, we've done over 850 sites built in 2020, so we have a lot of experience with doing this and getting conversion through the process. In the year 2020 alone, we have over 1 million page views that have landed on those 850 plus sites. And so we really do have the data level to be testing and making the decisions that we need to make. We also get the benefit of all the registrations directly connecting to Interest Tracker. And then also we have 30 different domains. This is important for brand integrity. So we have different domains, whether you're doing a health event or whether you're doing a prophecy seminar or any kind of event. That really helps you guys and helps support conversion because again, the brand is not your church yet at the offer. It will be, but not yet at the offer. And so we want to make sure that we have a domain that really signals and matches the offer that we have. And then the entire Relevant Seminars brand is branded for evangelism. Relevant Seminars is a nonprofit organization with a sole purpose of communicating the gospel across North America. And so as people research it or look it up, that's what they're going to find. And that creates a certain level of separation for you guys in that process as well. So if you're going to be doing landing pages, if you're going to be doing online evangelism and marketing, I do recommend that you either use our service or other services that are tested and really have the right pieces in place. If they don't, your conversion numbers will be low and you'll be wasting dollars. It makes me think of the commercials that I hear on the radio occasionally for people who have bad hearing. And I always think, interesting choice. If you don't have a good landing page, no matter how many people come to that ad, it's as if they just can't understand what the offer is, and they're not going to give you their information, and you're not going to get anything out of it, and it's just going to be wasted dollars, and that's definitely what we don't want to do. I do want to address one more thing as we start to come to a close on this. We're getting close to that hour mark, and I do want to answer some questions for everybody. So I have a couple more points really quickly, but this one is very important as well. We get a lot of questions about hybrid meetings as we're all left in the uncertainty of the 2020 environment. We're left trying to figure out what to do with stay-at-home orders and how it works. Churches have theorized that maybe doing both an online and a physical option and promoting both equally might be of some value. I can tell you, we don't have a ton of data on this, so I'm going to be as transparent with that as possible, but we have done multiple events. I would say at this point we've done 4 or 5 that utilize this. This is true for all of them. Hybrid meetings had a higher cost and a lower attendance for both online and physical options. So when people did hybrid meetings, they didn't get the best of both worlds. They got the worst of both worlds. They spent more money and had lower attendance on both options. We are going to support hybrid meetings because there is a time and a place. We understand that. But as a general rule, as a marketing person and somebody that wants to see you do the most effective thing you can, I would say no hybrid meetings. My suggestion to you is do a short-run online event. And then if the environment in your area and your community allows for physical events, invite people once you build initial relationship online to a physical option. It's hard to say. The data models are out the window for what to do in 2020 when it comes to physical meetings. Some of you have had successful physical meetings when there have been breaks in the stay-at-home order. I don't have anything to urge there. There's just not enough data because there weren't enough of them this year. But we have tried hybrid meetings and they have not shown to be successful in the process. So if your board brings that up, if you guys are talking about it, I would suggest doing 2 separate small, do a small online event leading to a physical meeting, or just do a physical meeting if your area allows for it. I understand if that's the direction you want to go, but offering both has not been super successful. It can be for worship service, I understand that, and that's where the idea comes from, but when you're talking about an event, what you end up doing is you give people too many options, they don't make a decision, and they land at paralysis and do not attend the event, or at least that's what the data is showing. I wanted to use this slide really quick as we get close to the end because this is a slide from the owner Larry's Church Marketing Today. You may have attended one of his seminars back in the day when we could attend seminars and actually be around each other. The idea here is to use this visual to understand the purpose of evangelism at a macro level. It is to move people closer to a relationship with Jesus. All we're asking for is movement. in an online environment, in evangelism in 2020, we were able to successfully do that as we learned our lessons and got better at it. But we were forced to start farther out in the circle. I love this bullseye approach. Today, we're reaching out to the community to communicate with them at the community level. We're connecting with them where they're at. We need to follow up with that by making offers that meet their felt needs, that offer them an opportunity to step into ongoing community and relationships. And we need to meet people where they're at in their homes, and understand this is not the same as a worship service. Hopefully then we can invite them and we can communicate with them wherever they're at to move down a level into a crowd environment, which would be those small groups or the grief care, those kinds of sessions, different types of things. People are struggling with anxiety. So once you build relationship, you can invite them into those closer small group environments. At that point, hopefully, as the world becomes more normalized and maybe, we can actually go back to regular church gatherings all across the U.S. We can move them through the doors of the local church to the congregation. And of course, the end goal is moving them through discipleship to being committed members and core as well. So remember, our objective is to move people toward increasing commitment to Jesus and a deeper spiritual maturity. But we can do that. We need to look at that at levels. And today, evangelism does work. It is effective and it is important. People are hurting out there in these communities and we're getting high response rates. But we do have to realize we're starting out one level farther than we're used to. And that changes the way we think. It changes our paradigm and how we respond to the community as well. So with all that said, with all of the things that we have in place, I want to share with you guys something that we're super excited about at SermonView. This is new. You guys are the first ones to hear about it. And I want to use those engagement tools on the right to give you an opportunity to find out more about it, because we don't even have all the answers. We're just moving down this road right now. But we are releasing an event in association with Faith for Today, in association with the speaker over there, Roy Ice. He's an amazing and powerful speaker. We're putting together an event that has a spiritual and a life sort of coaching environment to it to really reach a very unique demographic. And it's called Indestructible. And it's coming out this April 9. We're going to be hosting a 5-night event that Roy is going to be presenting 5 strategies for launching a life of happiness and purpose. This is going to be an opportunity for your local church to use all the systems we talked about. By participating in this event, we'll be using Roy's content in a live streaming environment where you get all the connections. He's going to be presenting opportunities for people to engage, interact, and all of that goes to your local church. So this is everything we've talked about in evangelism, the ability to use different communication portals, the ability for you guys to connect with everyone at different stages of the environment. And it's a nice 5-night series. So this does a lot of things. If you're planning a spring event, you could use this as a launching pad to that spring event, whether it's physical or not. If you're using something for fall, this is an opportunity to build a huge interest list and engage with members of your community to move them into ongoing events. Luckily, Faith for Today also has a ton of resources that you can use as follow-up, whether it's marriage resources or grief share or other community felt needs types of events. This is a great opportunity for you to connect with your community right where they're at. Everyone has been beat up by the world. And what we're going to be talking about is the strategies for them to be able to connect. And Faith for Today is a great vehicle for that. They have a really unique audience. They're going to be promoting this through all of their channels. And so it's super important that we get local churches in the community, because people all across America are going to be going and trying to find the church closest to them that they can engage with, although they'll just be looking by zip code to sign up because they won't be connecting with the local church directly. That'll be something that happens on the back end. But the point is that they'll be looking in your community for somebody to be hosting this event. We would love to see a church in every community across America engaging with this. So I'm happy to answer some questions about this, but you're probably going to have more questions than I have answers. So what I'd love you to do right now is go to that screen on the right, go to that screen down at the bottom if you're on a mobile device, and see where it says a free gift to you. We'd like you to fill that out and just let us know you're interested. You're just interested in more information about Indestructible. This doesn't obligate you to anything. This just says, man, that could be a great way to introduce our church to a different demographic, to some people in our area, people that are hurting. This is a good fit for us. We're going to be unpacking this more. You're going to have an opportunity to hear from and meet Roy at a closer level as we continue through this process. We are just starting to build this out right now, but we wanted you guys to have a first look at it and to let you know that this really does follow everything we have learned and educated ourselves on over the 2020 season. And we think for April, this is a great touch point, regardless of where your community is at with physical meetings or online. It's short enough that you can move them right to a physical meeting afterwards. And so it's a great point of connection. So if you will, if you're intrigued, if you're interested at all, please fill out your information under the area that says free gift to you, and somebody from our team will be tracking that. And as we get more information, we'll get you on a list and we'll be communicating with you about Indestructible, a meeting coming up April 9, all across the NAD. So that's what we've got there. So after that, we've got probably some questions.
Yeah,
so
Vince.
Let's see what we got.
Several questions that have come through. First one, somebody's challenging the 32% and the 50%. The question is, are you sure that these percentages are not inflated?
I am solidly sure these. I personally checked all of the data across the nation. If you're not getting those, I can give you a number of reasons why. Perchance, it's offered. We've talked about this in multiple webinars. The quality of the offer makes a huge difference. The landing page makes a huge difference. The type of advertising makes a huge difference. The communication portal makes a huge difference. There's so many factors. Just being transparent, online evangelism is harder than physical old evangelism. Done correctly, these are the numbers. So I can tell you these are the numbers from Interest Tracker, from the events that we've participated in, we've engaged with. I've seen huge swings in those numbers. There are certainly people getting less. There are certainly people getting more. That is the nationalized average across the board. If those numbers don't apply to other ministries or people who have done events in other ways, I cannot speak to that. I can only speak to the data we have from Interest Tracker. But we have 750 churches. We have multiple, hundreds of churches that participate in events this year. And I was excited when I saw that data. So those are the numbers we're getting. If you're not getting them in your area, call us up. Let's talk about what we can do. Some areas are harder than others, though. I want to make sure that everyone is aware. I've said it multiple times. That's national data. There are certain areas that do better than others, but we're here to support you guys.
Another question, with the sermon viewer, how does this work with appeals at the end of a sermon?
So the tools that you have in front of you with the sermon viewer. You have the ability to ask questions, comments. So what we've seen is you can invite people to even a decision through the system. Now, all of our technology is going to expand and grow. The sermon viewer is going to become a more robust platform over time. Interest Tracker, we're investing in all the time. Attendance Tracker. So these things will grow and improve as you guys are utilizing these systems and as you guys are engaging with us about your needs. But right now, what we found is that you can use the current structure and the questions. You just have to engage people. Tell them, hey, I want you to go into the comments and questions section right now and say these things. I was encouraged when I looked at Forecasting Hope. I spent a couple of days looking at all the interactions, just one by one, going through different interactions. There were 10,000. I didn't go through all of them, but I saw so many of them where somebody would say, yes, I want this. Yes, I make a commitment to this. Yes, I want to know more about this. People were engaging to the questions that were being asked by the speakers in these events. So this is a really powerful tool. You just have to understand the viewer and the player that you're in. It's why I like this over Facebook and I like this over YouTube. First of all, you don't know who those viewers are. You're going to ask them to give you information. That's not an easy thing for them to do in those environments compared to this. We actually already know their information. We know who they are. We generally know their phone number. We know their address if they've given that early on in the registration process. So it all connects back very easily. It lowers the friction. Having people respond in public environments like Facebook Live can be very detrimental. You end up with arguments. We all know social media is not a relationship tool. It's a tool of division in so many ways. You have people communicating live on those environments. You're going to find people asking questions and other people responding, maybe not in love the way that they should. This is an opportunity for you to put your trained people at your church, your members that know how to respond, to get these requests and to send them back and start dialoguing with them in a real relational environment, not creating some sort of, frustration or some sort of challenge online through other methods. So I've seen it used really well. I read through all those notifications and all of those engagements, or so many of them, and my encouragement only went up the more I dug into this data, guys. So it's positive, and I can say that with a genuine heart. There was some really good stuff in there, and it's permission-based marketing. People are asking people to call them or email them. That's as good as it gets online. If you can get someone to say, I want to talk to somebody, that's powerful stuff.
So we have been continuing to invest in Interest Tracker and the Sermon Viewer. I mean, we just released the Sermon Viewer 2 months ago, and looking at continuing to add features to that. And we are looking for a way on the development roadmap is a way to more formalize the decision response process. But the conversation we've been having internally is our online responses, decision responses, are they as powerful as in person? And if so, how do those need to work using the Sermon Viewer and that type of thing? So we have nothing to announce right now, but it is on the roadmap, and we're looking at how to better do that. Right now, you do have the ability to ask people to leave a comment, and that is working. We got a question from Elder Bill McClendon at the North Pacific Union related to the Sermon Viewer. He said, will you be able to allow true interactive engagement, such as online chat? So this is something, again, that we've been talking about. It is on our development roadmap. We don't have anything to announce today about that. Again, the conversation that we've been having is, do we want to offer true real-time interactive chat? And if so, what are the limitations that we want to put on that? We don't want chat to be distracting from the content, but there may be a case where real-time response would be appropriate. So we're looking at how to do that, what kind of tech can be developed to be able to do that. Do you have anything else you want to add about online chat, Vince?
I want to say, I think, first of all, I think these are great questions. Thank you. And we'll continue to work through these ideas. One thing that came out of 2020, though, is we really evaluated, and we want to hear from you guys as well. But we have to understand that the method now has changed the mentality. And I don't want to build a method that matches the old system. We have to understand how relationships are built in an online environment. Chat can be powerful. Some of these other questions about decisions can be powerful. But I don't know that you can, I don't have any evidence. And if you're trying to get serious decisions that lead up to baptism online, I don't know that that's an effective tool. There were baptisms after Forecasting Hope from surveys. We did see that data, but I don't have comparison on that versus in-person meetings. We don't track for baptism as part of our stuff, so I don't have hard data there. I do know that if somebody says, hey, will somebody reach out to me? And then you do, that builds trust. And then you build relationship off of that trust. It's an opportunity to actually have a real conversation. I would prefer not to allow chat and allow somebody to say, somebody call me please, because I want to talk to somebody, and turn that into a phone conversation where now that person gets the experience of a human voice. Chat is a dangerous model. I train my staff regularly on how to chat appropriately. I'm not convinced that real-time communication being managed by a local church is an effective communication tool. It takes substantial training. Utilizing phone and standard forms of communication that people are more comfortable with, email and phone, I think is better. Bad chat is bad. And so, we're open to developing those things, but I would love to see everybody really embraced the idea of what the point of online is and how its job is to get people to ask you to engage with them at the next level and participate in that. And that's what we saw with Forecasting Hope. We did offers where people requested free books and requested information. And then we did prayer requests. There were so many prayer requests. People were allowed to call somebody and say, hi, we're praying for you down here, but I also want to pray with you right now. Can I do that? Do you know what relationship building that is? That's not going to be done well on chat. So that's my opinion. That's why we haven't pushed for those technologies. We're very open to hearing from you guys at the front line. But I do want you to hear my heart that I want this to be depth of relationship and not just convenience of communication.
3 more questions that I want to go through.
Yeah.
The first one, talking about landing pages. Here, great question, very timely. Are you able to modify current church websites to evangelism landing pages? Ours, like many, are through Advent Source or Adventist Church Connect.
How much do you want me to talk about there, Larry?
Let's just say that this is something that we're actively working on. Well, I think, yeah, we're looking at each other. We have signed an agreement with Advent Source to partner with them to help churches make their websites more evangelistic, more outreach oriented. And a key part of that is creating evangelistic landing pages on their existing websites. There's a lot of challenges.
The great
questions about that, but go ahead, Vince.
I was just going to say the great tragedy and the great challenge with church websites is that websites are no longer mandatory so that people can find your address. I mean, you can do that in Google Local. They can do that 100 other ways before they find your website. Your website has to balance being an evangelistic tool. The study I read the other day was, 70%, and that was from a couple of years ago, used the web as a way of determining whether or not to visit a local church environment. So your website can actually just be more of a detriment than anything if not set up correctly as an evangelism tool. We want to help you guys, but it's also a challenge because it's also a member tool and it's very complicated. And I can tell you, we have had lots of conversations and we now have something in place as the starting point for us to be able to communicate with you. So please just keep your ears open. We want to support churches in this way. We love what Adventist Connect has been able to do in helping churches get websites. Now, how do we turn them into evangelism tools in a local community? We want to support them.
We have a webinar that we have scheduled for January 13, where we are going to be talking about local church websites and some ways that you can improve them and some things that we're going to be bringing to the table to assist you with that. All right, 2 more questions. One is from my old classmate Shane Anderson. Is it possible the hybrid meetings may have less attendees but greater engagement? The whole width versus depth argument, thus leading to greater, deeper results long term.
As I shared, I want to be fair to this topic because I don't have a ton of data because hybrid events have been somewhat reactive based on environments where things have opened up, closed back up. People are trying to figure it out. It has been my experience from the marketing side that what I'm really talking about is the number of actual engagements to the beginning level. People spent more money and got very few people to actually move from the communication point of registration to the point of either attending or to the point of viewing. The depth of those relationships, although that's a valid point, and I appreciate that very much, the number was low enough. I would have a hard time making sense of that depth versus doing segmented versus hybrid, doing online and then switching. I think it's very easy to do a local event that's online for 3 nights and then suggest you're going to be moving to an in-person environment if your community holds that. You're asking someone to build a little trust. Understand, Marketing works very much, and I use this phrase all the time. If you've watched our webinars, you're probably sick of it, but friction. So an online event has very low friction because they can watch it in the comfort of their home in their pajamas, while eating popcorn or whatever. It's a different thing getting in your car, driving somewhere, having to actually put on real clothes, and go into a building. And especially now, people are less attuned to it. I've been working from home. I had to put on, I am wearing pants, so that's good. I put on slacks and a dress shirt for you guys. I came into the office today. That's a lot of work. You get really convenient at just sort of walking from one room into the other room and just going to work. And so it's even more stress on people now. But if you can build some trust, that's how you alleviate friction. Relationship alleviates friction, right? You're going to a stranger's house. You're going to somebody you know and love's house. No problem. Sounds great. That's that piece. So if you can do an online event and then move them to that, I see that as a more successful model. But please understand, at the end of the day, we only have data to present. I don't have anything to urge. If you guys are going to do hybrid meetings, please do them. I'm going to use the data to help us understand better and better. This webinar, this event was about sharing with you the data and the results that we have from having an interest tracker that connects to an attendance tracker, that connects to a video module, that moves to viewership. We have all of this data, more data than you guys could have gotten individually, and we want to share that with you. I don't have a lot of data on hybrids, so if you guys do them, well, then we'll get more data. That'll be great. But right now, I would say be hesitant.
The last question, I'm actually going to munge two questions together for the last question, but this has to do with using the sermon viewer for a weekly worship service. So one question is, how can we use the sermon viewer with our weekly worship service to track those that may be watching us on YouTube or Facebook? And then the other question is, the sermon viewer is better used in webinar or events versus regular worship services. So here's the thing. The sermon viewer, we designed to be a closed system. Content has value, and if you're offering something of value, people are willing to jump through some hoops to get that thing of value. And they'll give you information, they'll go through the check-in process to be able to watch your content through the viewer. If your worship service is something that you want to disseminate more widely, then yeah, the sermon viewer is not the right thing to do there. If you are asking people to check in and then simply sending them to YouTube Live or to Facebook Live, people are not going to check in because they know that they can just go to Facebook or YouTube and actually find that live content. So from our perspective, there are things that maybe you could do to market your online worship service, but continuing to do that through Facebook Live. At my church, we actually do Zoom for our regular members so that they can have conversations before and after church through Zoom. But then we also do YouTube Live and Facebook Live. And those, I'll give you the archive. The sermon viewer doesn't really make sense for that. It's designed for evangelistic events, for outreach events.
I will say, as an addendum to that, I've trained multiple churches now on using attendance tracker. So I agree with you 100% on the sermon viewer. We've trained some churches to use attendance tracker for their worship service. And here's how they do it. They create a event, which is just Sabbath worship, and then they create all of the meetings, and then they can use the check-in module. So what you do there is you can still stream to Facebook and YouTube, and that's great for kind of the new people and everything. And then you tell people, if you want to engage with people, if you want to have a relationship, or if you want to connect, or if you want to chat or whatever, we have a Zoom meeting that we do, and we present it through Zoom as well. And if you go through our check-in, then you'll go to that. So basically, you can show it other places, but when people want to watch the Zoom portion, which allows for some different environments, then they can use the check-in. And so they're getting their attendance. And in fact, because you can use attendance tracker for physical and for check-in, that's a great time for hybrid, obviously. If you're doing physical, but you have social distancing rules and only 50 people or 5 people or whatever can come through the doors of your church, you can have them check in right there, and then everyone else can check in online, and you can keep tabs that way. But you can still go with width and depth in that environment by running the streaming out there, but when people want to build a little bit of depth, they can go through the check-in module. And we've seen some success with that. I haven't talked to them too much about how it's worked, but I've seen a couple churches continuing that methodology, and they're really enjoying it. So there are some tools you can use with Interest Tracker for that. But the sermon viewer itself is currently today, at least at a minimum, is very suited for streaming series or bigger events.
All right, that wraps up today's webinar. We went a little bit long, but thank you for being part of this. Again, we just appreciate your ministry so much. The work that you're doing, I know that it's hard right now. There's so much whiplash, and we're just honored and grateful beyond words to be able to partner with you in your ministry, to be able to support you in all of this. Couple of upcoming dates. I mentioned the January 13. You'll hear more about that on church websites, turning them into evangelistic machines. April 9 is the date for the Indestructible series.
Thank you guys for your time. Remember, if you have any last comments, our team is going to be working through our own Interest Tracker account and engaging with everybody based on your comments or thoughts. So in this last seconds here, if you put anything into the comments, questions, prayer requests, or anything, it will go to our team, and we'll be working backwards through that and just talking to you guys about it. But we want to thank you for participating and hopefully getting a better understanding what evangelism was like in 2020, how to change our paradigm and our thought process on that a little bit, and how to move forward as we move into 2021.
Thank you, everybody. We appreciate you. God bless.
God bless.